All right. It looks like we are live for Wildcard Wednesday. Number 7? Is that what it is? I forget. So, number 7 on Wildcard Wednesday. Now, the thing is, I did not come up with a topic for tonight. So, as you know, I'm not completely prepared. I had it's been a bit of a it's been yeah, it's been a bit of a week. I've been very busy with the shop, getting things together. Got a massive order of Peacemaker trigger shoes from the Gun Co. so that I can start putting together the retail versions of the Peacemaker series. I've been getting that ready. There's been obviously this time of year is crazy for shipping. I know there's a massive winter storm across part of the country, and I've seen some packages either get delayed that I've sent out or even partially destroyed. And that's always fun. This time of year is just crazy when it comes to shipping, and I'm sure you guys are aware of that. Hey, Steven, how's it going, man? Good to have you here as always. Hope things are good. One of these days we need to have a conversation. I'm interested definitely in your trigger experiences. Just bounce some ideas off one another. That would be awesome. So like I said, it's been busy with all of the everyday operations of the shop, getting triggers built, preparing for different things. And then I decided shoot me an email if you would, Steven. Go run to the if you would go to the website, shoot me an email. You know, YouTube is not the best place for messages and whatnot. There's just not a good. So shoot me an email. That would be great. And then I decided, like I said the other night, to I've had a project in mind on my Challenger that I was going to swap out the supercharger, and I've been kind of putting it off. And the other night, as I was working out in the shop where I've got my little gym set up, I decided, cool, thank you, Stephen. I decided that I was going to tackle the supercharger swap, which isn't too bad of a deal. Normally there's you buy it in a kit and you throw parts together. I bought a used one. Now I had supercharged the Challenger. It's just a basic RT. I know this is a gun show, but this actually is going to tie into something here shortly. So having supercharged it in the past, I did a kit, and it was a relatively weekend long ordeal. Everything's in a nice package. It kind of goes together relatively easy. Now this swap is a used supercharger that is meant for my platform, but it's not all there. So between having already adapted it to a supercharger, and each supercharger kit is just a little bit different in how they route different hoses and bolts and pulleys and that sort of thing, it's been interesting. It's not the big part of the swap that is a pain. It's all of the little nuts and bolts. So why do I bring this up? Why do I bring this up? Well, one, you can see I'm wearing a different t-shirt. I'm not wearing the Tactical Pontoon shirt. I am wearing a Sendology 101 t-shirt. Okay. Sendology 101 is my car channel. It is part of my car aspiration, something that I work on the side, and I'm starting the YouTube channel back up for Sendology 101, which used to be XI tuning back in the day, back when I was actually doing uh, tuning, um, online tuning, and working on people's piggybacks and HP tuners and that sort of thing. It's something I've done on and off over time, and as I push forwards for the Tactical Pontoon channel, and as I'm working on different projects out in the shop, Sendology 101 will be coming back online. So like I said, it does tie in. That's why I'm wearing the shirt tonight. That channel will be coming back online. I've been posting a couple shorts to it, but I'll be putting content onto that. So that's kind of my little self plug for something else that I'm doing, as well as all of the Tactical Pontoon stuff, because I don't like taking a break. I don't like not doing things. So that doesn't mean that it's going to take away from Tactical Pontoon. Like I said, I've been doing both for quite a while. Might as well put some of that online as I screw things up there. Definitely have a graveyard of parts with that. Okay. Anyways, back to Tactical Pontoon and triggers. Um, as I said a moment ago, I truly did not have anything terribly special planned for tonight. There was one thing I did want to talk about. Yesterday, I released the OZ9 uh, Zev Pro trigger video. Just something quick to, because really the reality is there's not a lot into that trigger. It's a good solid option. It wasn't really it did surprise me. Their quality has gone up. Hey, what's up, MR2 Scroll? Good to have you here. You missed me talking about cars. I kind of wearing the Synology 101 t-shirt. I know you had already subscribed to the channel. I will be putting stuff up on there. I'm planning on doing that. So this is my way of holding myself accountable to doing that. There was something I was going to talk about gun wise, and we will I'll get into that in a moment. Where was I at? I got sidetracked. OZ9, yes, the Zev trigger. Looked at it. Definitely, Zev is stepping up their game, but at the same time, that trigger system is kind of basic for what it is. Their trigger shoe is still mid pack. Nothing too terribly special about it. Not a big fan of the encapsulated pins. But other than that, it's a pretty solid design. They've definitely upped their game on the trigger bar. They did take a step back with their modifications, but I can understand why they do it because it's now an issued sidearm. I get that. Makes sense. At least their quality went up. It is kind of overpriced, in my opinion, for what you get. Peacemaker is definitely a better option. And so I released that video. We've got the Steven at both flat triggers. Yeah, the older design is a little bit nicer. It, I've always considered Zev mid pack, truly mid pack at best. They're still mid pack in my mind, even though they've upgraded what they got going on in there. It's a higher quality. Um, Jedi stickers. Now, the mail has definitely lost a few of these. I've had people that I've sent these guys out to that have not received theirs yet. If that is the case, let me know. I will send out another. Like I said, this time of year, the mail system shipping in general is just crazy. So if you've ordered one of these within, like 2 weeks, because that they definitely should have gotten there by now. If you've ordered one and you haven't received it, let me know. I know that the mail has had some issues. They've lost some of my just decal or sticker orders that I've sent out. Now, I still got the contest going on. I have not received very many pictures. If Jesse, if you're watching this, I'm waiting, man. I know you're gonna do something crazy. You're probably still waiting for your sticker and it probably got lost. Let me know if so. So what I'm probably going to do is end up extending that contest out a little bit. Got another sticker design. I'm not showing you guys yet. I want to show you guys the next sticker design. I do, but I want to continue on with the Trigger Jedi thing and that contest till right after the beginning of the year. But I've got another sticker design and it's pretty damn awesome. Yeah. So, Steven, those are rivets and not actual pins. I Like I said, I haven't dug into it that far. I was gonna drill, and I'm actually gonna drill that one out. But if it is rivets instead of pins, I may just leave that thing alone and just add it to the extra triggers that I've got sitting. I may do that instead of tearing it apart. Ugh, rivets. I dealt with enough rivets on aircraft. That was That was an eye opener. As a guy who went from working on cars and then went into aviation, I remember going into aviation school and they were talking about rivets. And my thought about rivets were, from the 30s watching the Three Stooges when they would do riveting on buildings. And here I was getting into aviation. They're still talking about rivets. I'm like, oh my God, what did I walk into? Um, yeah, I did my time with rivets. Did my time with rivets. I really don't want to mess with rivets on a trigger, especially a trigger that I'm not a huge fan of. Like I said though, it's a solid uh yeah, yeah, you're gonna need a whole trigger setup. Just what you do, MR2 scroll, sell the trigger to somebody. I know the PSA dagger guys. PSA was offering that trigger in the dagger for a little bit, and of course they had some trouble with it because I I'm guessing they just didn't spend time to actually test it, but the safety was hanging up on the dagger frame. But sell it on one of the PSA dagger sites. You can sell it. I mean, that's the thing. Somebody will buy it, or you can have it as a. It's always good to have extra parts. But you definitely want a Leonidas for that bad boy. you you want a Leonidas for that bad boy. I've got my dagger, my OZ9 right here with my Leonidas, and just right there at the wall, just crisp, clean at the wall. Uh, yeah. See, I don't understand. They should just leave the screws. The eh, between the adjustable screws and see when I think about Zev, I think about their adjustable performance competition trigger systems. So for me to see just their basic stuff, it throws me off because for me, Zev is the high perform used to be what I consider the high performance competition setups. To see it morph more into something that's just basic along the lines of everybody else's stuff, just it still throws me off to this day. So when I think of Zev, it's adjustable stuff. And don't get me wrong, their stuff for a while was absolute garbage. Um, just almost along the same lines for me as Lone Wolf, and the pyramid trigger stuff. Which oh my god, I don't understand how well it's. I know why Pyramid's still around in Glock store is because it's literally called the Glock store. So when people think, oh, I got a Glock, I'll just go to the Glock store. Lenny. I mean, dude, marketing genius. He came out with it first. I'll give him that. But man, there's so much better out there than that. Lenny, a little bit envious of Lenny. I don't know if I want to be that brown, but he's he's made his mark, and I guess there's a place for him in the market. So I can't be too upset. Okay, one thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to do a top-down video on this, and I touched on it a little bit in the Tyrant Designs video, and I talked just a little bit about it in the Zev trigger, is trigger pin holes. The actual pin that goes through the locking block through the trigger. Okay. This is something that doesn't really get talked about a lot. I've talked about it a little bit on here is how tight that pin fits in a trigger shoe because it's one thing that even I've overlooked at over time until here recently really started paying attention to it. And I'll get into that here in a moment of how that can change your trigger experience because having something that's looser is going to add obviously extra slop in your trigger system. So even if you've got an amazing trigger setup, it's going to add a little bit of extra slop that for some people, they're not going to notice. But for other people, it's going to be something that is going to make or break a trigger. Apex, for example, and The Tyrant, which is just another copy of the Apex, is a very loose trigger shoe. It fits on that pin really loosely. More it has more, slop in it than a factory trigger. Now, uh, I got out my ball gauge and my micrometer, and I'm going through and measuring a bunch of triggers I have here in the shop. So whether or not it'll be this week or next week when I do a video, drop a video on that, I can't say for sure. And also, we've got the holidays coming up. I haven't quite decided uh, if I'm gonna take one of the streams off. We'll see. I mean, everybody's out doing things for the holidays, and me just streaming out here for nothing would be, you know, got a few better things I could be doing with my time, but we'll take a look at it. Back to measurements. Like I said, getting out the micrometer and the ball gauges. I'm going to mic a bunch of them, lay it out on a video so you guys can get an idea of some of the looser triggers out there versus some of the tighter triggers, and how that can actually change maybe what you consider a good trigger. Now, having a loose trigger is not a bad thing if you're just wanting something for a carry trigger. Okay. Now, if you want a competition trigger, you want something tighter, then obviously you want something that fits tighter. But another thing that comes into it is ever since Glock released the Generation 5, where the trigger shoe is narrower up top and and it's narrower up top because of the ambidextrous slide release lever. Okay. Because of that, you have a narrower trigger shoe. Now, the aftermarket makes pretty much all of them have gone to using a Generation 5 style trigger shoe in all generations. Okay. So you have a narrower trigger shoe up top. Now, in your Generation 1 through 4 and Glock 43, you are going to have extra room up there on the trigger pin because your aftermarket trigger shoe now is narrower. For the most part, you're never going to notice this. However, it can make a difference. I know with, for example, the Overwatch polydats, they have some of the loosest tolerances on that trigger pin hole that I've seen, which when you pair it with a Generation 1 through 4 or P80, you can actually have a good deal of extra movement that you wouldn't normally want. And if you've got, for example, an Apex that's got more slop than factory, you could notice it and possibly have even a problem where it rubs against the frame. Uh, like I said, it's gonna vary by the trigger shoe. It's gonna vary by your frame. There are a couple variations, but I do want to make this list and kind of show you guys some of the looser ones versus some of the tighter ones, so that if you're building and want a trigger system that is competition worthy, uh, you want something a bit tighter. Steven says, yes, you can have some issues with the Generation 5 profile in a Generation 3 4 that has too big of a trigger pin hole. All right, Jesse. Good. Good. I hope they made it. Like I said, the mail has eaten some of the stickers that I've sent out. So I'm probably going to extend the contest. Don't scare me too much though. So yes, it can make a difference. And that brings me to something else that I've seen. Okay. The Boogeyman Customs trigger shoe is one of the tighter ones on the market. And this is a good thing. It's not too tight. There's still a slip fit. It's that pin fits in there fine. If your trigger pin holes are good. And when I say that, I mean more like your P80s where somebody may have drilled it a little bit off, or they've perhaps drilled a little bit off and, just tore that trigger pin up trying to get it through the frame. And then they buy a Boogeyman Customs and they have some issues because their trigger pin has been scored or marked. And I've seen this. in not only my own shop, because I do go through trigger pins because from, different tests that I do, I may have a trigger pin that ends up in a vise or a pair of pliers, and then that trigger pin gets scored up. Not a lot, and it doesn't take a lot, but if you score that trigger pin up, you may have trouble getting it through a Boogeyman Customs because they do have tight tolerances. Same with the Gunco trigger shoes that I'm also using and I'm a big fan of. They are tighter, but if you have a scored up trigger pin or you have a P80 that's not drilled up correctly, you could have an issue. Uh, that's not a problem with the trigger shoe. That is a problem with your method or your extra parts. Um, all right, Jesse, I'll get you taken care of. I got your address, and I'll send out a couple more. Don't worry about it. I'll send more out. Probably 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 not tomorrow. It'll probably be more like Friday. I'll get you a couple more out. I'll get it taken care of. Don't worry about it. So at if you want a good tight trigger combination, the Boogeyman is excellent. But if you have issues with your pistol or the parts of your pistol, you could have an issue. Now, I bring this up because I've seen a guy, I'm not going to bring up his name, who has contacted my customers or grabbed them online on or not forums, maybe forums. I really I haven't been to many forums in quite a while. Facebook groups, and he's got a video where he talks about reaming up Boogeyman trigger shoes. And he's specifically said that he's had to ream up some of my trigger shoes or trigger systems that I've sent out. Now, he normally works on P80s. All the work that I have seen are P80s. Okay. That's why I bring up the fact that if your trigger pin holes on your P80 frame are not correct, you could have an issue. Now, I've seen people screw up P80s. As I said earlier, I have a background I kind of alluded to the fact that I have a background in aviation. I did structures work in aviation. My whole job for quite a while was drilling holes and plugging them back up. That's what we said. As a structure guy, we drilled holes and shit and we plugged it back up with new fasteners. Okay. So a P80 never presented much of a problem to me. I could do one relatively quickly if I needed to, and my holes were straight. I've seen people try to use drill press, and that adds a whole new level to it. I know MGB Marine Gun Builder has a big thing about using the the drill press for the fucking Dremel. I know that's a big one, and that you can mess that up too. If you do it by hand, you follow the guides and you take your time, it can be done and it works out really well. If you can even use the drill bits that they send with it and end up with a high quality product. It can be done, okay? But if you don't, yes, you can run into a problem. And yes, the Boogeyman shoe will be less forgiving than some of the other ones out there. But for the love of God, do not ream up the trigger pin hole in a trigger shoe. There's no need for that. And there's no need to go telling people that they need to do that, especially if they've not had a problem. Okay. So, sorry. It throws me off. Hey, what's up, man? Is it Big Stealthy? Maybe it's Big I'm bad with these type of names. I don't know. How's it going, man? Good to have you here. So, and this is a I guess he's kind of a shop, if you will, does some stippling work. I've actually talked to the guy because I, I've talked to him online because he was very big about you know, commenting on my posts and trying to sell his trigger work. Okay. And so, and telling, how much better his was. And he uses, I've seen, he uses those aim surplus, wish.com copies of the Boogeyman trigger shoe. They don't look half bad. They got roll pins in them. They're like $30. They're cheap. I'm probably gonna order, or like 40 with the trigger bar. Probably gonna order one and take a look at it, but at the same time, it's Chinesium. They look okay. Whatever. Okay. So he's trying to sell to other people his trigger work and talking about how bad mine was. And I hit him up. Just hey, we have an issue. I don't. I've actually shared his work on Instagram just to give a good, I don't have any problem with other people working on triggers. That is, we all start somewhere. I'm good with that. Hey Angel, how's it going? How we doing? Just talking about some trigger stuff. Trigger drama. Not really. Just didn't have a lot on my plate tonight, so I'm throwing this one out there. It's kind of a fun topic. Uh Not gonna say his name, Steven, but or his shop's name. And I said, "Hey, do we have a problem? Have I done something to you?" And he kind of, "You really, I can refund that, Jesse. I have that power. Tell you what, I'll get you taken care of, and I'll throw a little something extra in for you, but you got to be quiet about it." um, so so I said, "Is there do did I do something to you for you to come after me like this?" And he kind of played it off and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm being a jerk." And I said, "Okay, well, we can work together. We can bounce ideas off to one another, you know, whatever." And then I see he's still doing this sort of thing and jumping on people about these trigger pin holes. When the reality is, if you just drill your trigger pin holes correctly, you wouldn't have that type of problem. So, if you see a video that talks about opening up the trigger pins on a Boogeyman trigger or any trigger pin, you can disregard that because that's just a failure on somebody else's part to do things right, or they need to get a new trigger pin. Like I said, if it gets scored, if that trigger pin gets scored and it doesn't take much, let's say you hit it, you're going kind of ham on it for some reason. Maybe you're new and you don't know about releasing that slide lock lever uh, before tapping that pin out, and you score that pin with a punch. It can cause an issue. Or say, for example, again, you're new, or you're me trying to do some sort of mad scientist experiment, and you grab it with a pair of pliers and you score up that trigger pin. You could have issues getting it to slide into a Boogeyman trigger shoe. It can happen. I understand that. But to tell people to ream out the trigger pin hole is not a good idea. And me personally, I also feel like anybody who tells you that you can use epoxy on the frame of a P80 to fix your screw up, it kind of goes in there along with that. I feel like that's a bad idea, but that's just me. I prefer somebody to drill a good hole in the first place, especially when they give you a guide and it's literally 3 holes. MR2 scroll of a similar situation, but car stuff. People don't want to listen. Not my issue. If you blow your motor up, always listen to the engine builder. Yes, it's always the tuner's fault. Just blame it on the tuner. Having done my share of engine tuning via email or looking at people's logs and that sort of thing, the amount of troubleshooting that I've had to do that had nothing to do with my tune was always fun. That's why I don't have hair. I pulled it all out doing engine stuff, tuning. So yeah. Um, yeah. Uh-huh. And let everybody, this is the absolute truth. It's the absolute truth. It's so easy for people to complain on the internet versus trying to figure their own shit out or, take some responsibility. But at the same time, I get it. It's an outlet for people to express themselves. And so I'm not terribly upset. But I am upset when it comes to bad information being handed out over something that a shop, and I'm talking, it's not a big shop, he's relatively small. I don't want to punch down, that's why I'm not going to say the name, and I hope he learns. And he does do builds in the shop, whereas I build things for people to install on their own. Okay, so yes, maybe he might be able to, man, I've seen it, throw a trigger stop that goes in the frame so he can build it right there. And with certain frame mounted stops, trigger stops, you can be a little bit more solid. I get that. But then again, if you can't drill a trigger pin straight, so you have to go around telling people that they need to ream up their trigger shoe. Well, there we go. I guess that's my that's my little rant for tonight. Like I said, I will be doing a video on the different trigger pin sizes that various triggers have. And I'll kind of get into why having a larger trigger pin hole is not a bad thing. I Jesse, hey, I'm a fat guy, so I do have to eat. Probably more than I should. Probably more than I should. I appreciate that, Jesse. Like I said, I'm gonna get you taken care of. I'm gonna throw some baby Jedis in there and something kind of cool. Uh, Another sticker. You'll get a preview to the new sticker. Okay. So I appreciate it as always, and I appreciate everybody. I really do. I get a lot of interesting things coming my way. A lot of really uh let's see. I remember a video where a guy told everyone tune their connectors with a pair of pliers improperly. Then everyone in the comments were asking why their trigger no longer reset. And not to mention you use a pair of pliers. I'm not sure how he was showing people how to do it, but if you scratch and score that connector in the right place, it's done. You might be able to polish it up and save it, but anybody who's using a pair of pliers in that area is usually not smart enough or not smart, skilled enough or knowledgeable enough to know how to then polish things up or what to look for. When I first started, I took it for granted that people who were changing their triggers might have a little bit more common sense or knowledge or not believe all of the internet myths. So I used to send my triggers out dry. Well, a lot of people, and it's still a bit of a prevailing myth that Glocks can run dry and they enjoy running dry and you should run a Glock dry. Well, what would happen is they would get a trigger, they would drop it in their frame. They probably hadn't seen oil since the factory or the copper based lubricant that they use. Probably hadn't seen any sort of lubricant since then. And now they've got a new trigger system and they proceed to dry fire it until it locks up. Some of them never locked up. It can have you. They get lucky. They go out and they go shooting, and the carbon from the ammo. Maybe they're shooting some Tula that's really dirty and carbony, and it gets in there and it lubricates everything up like it should be. Okay, but they would score their connectors, and at that point, you now have a Glock that might take 20 pounds before it breaks, if it will break at all. And I would get tons. I mean, I would say, when I say tons, I mean maybe 10 to 15%. Just a roundabout number off the top of my head that would run into a failure. And at first I'm like, what in the world is going on? And then I realized that people were not oiling their triggers or lubricating their triggers when they would put them in. So nowadays I put a little bit of my badger snot on each trigger bar where it connects to the connector, and also make sure there's a little bit on the end of the cruciform. Now, I still get messages to this day. I got one the other day. It says, "Hey, what's all this green stuff on my trigger? Do I need to wipe this off before I install?" So it's always fun. Hey, I see there's a few people in here. If you haven't already, hit that like button. It just helps the algorithm, helps keep things going, keeps the lights on, if you will. You like my festive lighting in here? Maybe next week I'll throw up some Christmas lights, but I got some candles in the background. It's fake. Like I said last time, there is still enough lint in here that any sort of open flame would cause a fire very quickly. So they're fake, but they look neat. I like the little ambiance, if you will. So, anyways, yes, once the connector is scuffed, you are pretty much done. Like I said, sometimes you can polish that off and save that connector. If not, like I basically warrantied out a ton of connectors in my early days because I didn't lubricate the triggers before I sent them out. Nowadays, I got lubrication. People don't know what it is, and I've had to explain many times, and it's on the website, but not everybody. You shut up, Jesse. Shut up. You can't keep me from keeping it. I'm doing it. Uh you know what? Maybe I should. I fear what you're gonna send me. Um so yes, in the early days, connectors, anything when you score when things and you may not even notice it. When you score something like that, it can cause issues that I know the vertical extensions are big on that. Hey Renee, how's it going? Good to see you here. Um, it can make a big difference because you've got a lot of metal on metal parts aside from the polymer of the frame itself. Those metal on metal parts need to have lubrication. They're gonna score. A Glock can run relatively dry. It really can, especially when you have basically factory parts. You do when you start to change things, and MR2 scroll, I know you can understand. I mean, everybody should be able to. When you start making stuff better, higher performance, you're going to have different requirements than factory. Okay? So a little bit extra lube in a Glock that's got higher performance parts that might have tighter tolerances require more lubrication in order to run right. So a factory Glock is a thing of beauty. It in its own way, it is perfection. They're not lying, but it's also the perfect place to start modifying. But it's not going to run exactly like factory, especially the higher end parts that you get that have the better tolerances. A Glock is loose for a reason, and it works great the way it is. The more performance it is, just like a car, you're going to run into different requirements. So there is that. Um, I was gonna bring something up when it comes to something being scored, and I can't remember what it was. I got off on my little car tangent. Anyways, whatever it was, it wasn't, I guess, terribly important. So yeah, cars. Um, what I was gonna talk about, I had the connectors going on. We talked about scoring on the connectors, trigger bar. I can't remember what it was. It was something. Obviously not important. Anyways, all right. That's pretty much all I have for tonight on Wildcard Wednesday. Was just going over the trigger pin holes, and I'm going to be doing a video on that. I've got a couple of videos that I'm going to be working, like some top down stuff. Going to look at a couple different triggers, some older ones, connectors. I want to do a top down on, like, basically I'm going to show you that a lot of these different connectors that you see are basically made by the same people, and we can see that by the different type of tooling marks that they have on them. Another one I want to do is, I see this a lot on the dagger pages, the PSA dagger pages, where they want to talk about changing a connector out. And really, for the most part, that's kind of a waste of money. If you're buying just about any connector on the market, your basic connectors, your 3.5 pound connectors, because that is what PSA used in theirs, is a copy of the 3.5 pound connector. So I want to do a quick video on that just to show people it might save them a little bit of money. You know, dagger guys, I like the PSA dagger. They are kind of a budget option. So while people want, I mean, I come from a background of building Dodge Neons. So I understand about having the budget car or the budget version and then building it up and doing it budget friendly. So being able to save them a couple dollars on a connector if they want a better trigger, uh, you know, I can save them that and show them how to maybe tune their trigger to what they have and get rid of that pile of crap hinge trigger. Of course, a lot of them keep buying those Tyrant triggers. I haven't dropped that video on the group yet. Oh, I will. They need to know. The dagger, yes. Well, let me go back. The Combat Armory G19. I like that frame. I really do. I really liked it until the SCT came out. When the SCT, because the Combat Armory is nice. It's a little bit blocky, but I saw where it had a lot of possibility if I were send it out to somebody to do framework, which I still need to do. I've got an extra one that I need to send out to somebody. I haven't decided who, so if you have an idea of who I need to send it to, shoot me a message, leave it out here in the comments. But the SCT frame, I like even better. And being that they're relatively close to the same price, my love for the Combat Armory G19 kind of fell to the wayside compared to the SCT. So the dagger, like I said, I like the dagger. It's a nice frame. It's very ergonomic, probably right up there along the lines of the Nomad frame in ergonomics. The ergonomics are great. The thing that I do not like about the PSA dagger is the roll pins. The fact that they used roll pins instead of pins like a Glock, just your standard press fit pins. It makes it kind of a pain in the butt. I've seen some people mess those up trying to get them out, not using the correct punches. Speaking of punches, this is like I said, you won't go wrong with the Combat Armory frame. It's a nice frame. I like it. So let me know how you like it, and if you have any issues with it or otherwise, just hit me up. The proprietary striker's not really that big a deal. It's just a small change, and you can use a Glock striker with a PSA dagger, so it's not that big a deal. But the roll pins, definitely not a fan of those, and people can mess those up. What was I gonna say? Anyways, must be something today. I can't remember what I was going on about. Nomad, like I said, the dagger is as comfortable to hold as one of the Nomads. Nomad is probably my favorite aftermarket frame, followed up by the SCT, and then the dagger. The dagger is in there, but the roll pins kind of kill it for me. I've got my dagger is actually at Texas Weapon Works, formerly Tommy Gun Stippling. It's a 357 SIG, so it would be a G32 at that point. He's got it. He's doing some crazy stuff. He's doing some crazy stuff to it. So it'll only be a dagger in name. It's going to probably be the most outrageous dagger out there. I know they actually did the other one that made the rounds, even made it to Sarah Coates' Instagram and whatnot. Yes, 357 SIG. Pardon me. 357 SIG is kind of my happy caliber. I like, if I ever buy a 40 caliber, I normally end up swapping it over to 357 SIG in some way, shape, or form. My H&K USP was one of their 40 calibers. I have since switched it over to 357 SIG to a varying degree of success. That platform was definitely not made for 357 SIG, so the feed rate on that is kind of, or success is kind of iffy. I actually made that one to use. Well, I converted some Glock mags to be used in that USP because I didn't feel like spending like $70 for a magazine. Yes, yes, we do lube our Glocks, Jesse, every once in a while. And then my VP9, my H&K VP9, originally was 40 caliber, and it's now a VP 357, multiple Glock 31s. That dagger will actually be my first Glock 32. I just have always, for some reason, gotten the full size 357s. So that's my thing. I do really like the 357 SIG. Another one is the 22 TCM9R. Everybody talks about the 5728. I think it's 28. Basically the FN 57. Everybody's big on that one. PSA released their Rock. Obviously FN and Ruger. They released theirs. Before that, I looked at that. It's an interesting caliber, but then Rock Island has their 22 TCM, and then they have their 9R, which is kind of what I would consider a poor man's FN 57. And to convert your Glock 19 or Glock 17, it's just a barrel. They also have a recoil spring, but I've always used the factory in mine, and it fits in the regular 9mm magazine. It's a short little stubby version of the standard 22 TCM. The problem with that is they only seem to offer that. They basically make that ammunition in batches. Like they might produce, for a month, they might produce a batch of that stuff, and then you pretty much kind of have to find it throughout the year. When I was buying it, I haven't bought a lot of it in a while. Honestly, I haven't bought much of that ammunition since 2019. I've got a decent supply of it. I would buy it when I found it. I just haven't here recently. I haven't really even shot that one recently. But it fed really nicely. It's fun to shoot because out of a Glock 17, it shoots a good size fireball, very little recoil, and that thing goes, arrow straight right down the range. It's a fun little conversion. I think the barrel and everything is like $150 to convert yours over to a poor man's FN 57, if you will. Use a standard Glock mags. It's fun. Ammo, I think, is like $30 at the time, probably closer to $40 for 50 rounds. But if you want something that's a little bit different, that's fun to shoot at the range, it's loud, it shoots out a fireball, very little recoil. It's a fun little. Somewhere along the line, I've got a video of me shooting mine. I may post it on Instagram again. It's been a little while. That's a neat caliber. I do tend to like the neck down calibers. I'm not a huge 10mm fan, or even 45. I do like 9mm. Not a huge 40 caliber fan. That's why I said I always convert my stuff over from 40 caliber to 357 SIG. I actually have an H&K P2000 that stays in the house that's still 40 caliber. I haven't hit up my guys over at Rim Country Manufacturing. When I get an HK and I need an HK barrel, they're the guys I go with. Built them some cool cool triggers for their Glocks, and they make the H&K barrels that I go with. I just haven't converted that one over. So yeah, that's my H&K talk, caliber talk. So yeah, 22 TCM. If you get a chance, it's something fun to play with. If I get a 1911 platform, Rock Island makes a 22 TCM version. I'd probably get something like that I could switch over to 22 TCM as well. One of those things. 40 caliber can be nowadays they've definitely got some good loads of 40 caliber. The 40 caliber is a neck or a shortened 10 millimeter. So it's actually kind of a some people originally consider it the worst of both worlds in between a 45 and a 9 millimeter. But like I said, in the last 5 to 10 years, call it 10 years now, they've really come out with some good 40 caliber ammunition. There for a while, it was real low power stuff. Even the 10 millimeter stuff was actually the few 10 millimeter loads that were out there were actually really low power. But it's come a long way compared to what it was. And then 9 millimeter is just kind of taken off like crazy. But then again, I am not an ammunition expert. I've I've got my, I probably have my false beliefs and little things that I think I know that were probably not true. Oh, triggers are my thing. Triggers I know, Glock triggers I definitely know. All of the specs of loading ammunition and ballistics and that sort of thing. Probably stuff I've watched on YouTube or the shooting I've done, and I've set up the water jugs and shot various self defense loads to kind of see what type of pattern that they would get. I really like the way the Sig V crown opens up. It was very similar to Spear Gold Dots, and at a better price. So that is definitely one of those Sig things that I really do like is their ammunition, their self defense ammunition. But you know, I do try to stay to triggers though. That's really what I know the most about when it comes to talking on here. So, but then again, I'll branch out from time to time and make my stupid statements. It's my channel. Anyways, the 40 caliber is the reason why the Glock Generation 3 has the third pin up top. They they were having issues, and they were the first ones on the market with the Glock 22 that ran 40 caliber. The late Generation 2 40 caliber, which was only made for a very short period of time. They were having some issues with actually moving of the trigger block housing, and that's why they added that third pin up there. And shortly thereafter, H&K dropped the USP. So the Glock beat them to the market. H&K had the USP in work, and they went through a lot of testing and built the USP around the 40 caliber. Whereas the Glock 22, they just kind of converted it over real quick, and then they fix things as they happen. That's why the Generation 3 has that third pin for the 9 millimeter and the 40 caliber. And then with the Generation 5 that they just dropped, the Generation 5 Glock 22 and 23, I believe they did the 23. It's got the wider slide to kind of help with that. So it's my little history lesson. So that's Wildcard Wednesday for this week. You know, I think we had a pretty good show. Got a good talked about some different things. I got to get the trigger pin thing off my chest, and kind of give you guys an idea of what's coming along the lines. Trigger wise, the Train with Purpose Generation 5 is live on the website. If you wanted one of those triggers, now the Generation 5 version is here. It's got a good tight fitting trigger pin, just like the Gunco and the Boogeyman. So don't ream it up. If you have an issue, get with me. We'll figure it out. And I've got the olive drab here, olive drab green, excellent looking color for that trigger, and an FDE. So those are live on the website. What else we got? I still need to add the OZ9 Leonidas to the website. I may keep this one to the Gunco Peacemaker trigger shoe. I may not do the Boogeyman. The supply for Boogeyman trigger shoes has been kind of tight. So probably until that expands a little bit, probably going to keep the excommunicado trigger shoe to just the 2 systems, or 3 if you count the big calibers. So anyways, guys, if you have any question, as always, if you need any help, any troubleshooting help, you can always reach out to me. I may link you to a video if I've got a video on it. It's not because you're bothering me. I might be busy, maybe helping somebody else, or the video you can see it up close and in person instead of trying to communicate with me via email, messenger, or dare it be the phone. Anyways, that's it, guys. I will catch you this Sunday on Swimming with the Pontoon. I will try to have something to talk about. I don't know that we'll have another guest until the beginning of the year. Everybody's out doing things, getting, presents and spending time with family, doing their thing. So we'll see. Last thing before I go, if you're a geek like me, we might have to mourn. I'm not a big Superman fan, but I did hear that Henry Cavill is no longer going to be Superman again. I'm a Batman guy, but it was kind of crazy that they're changing all this stuff up. Anyways, that's my little geek thing for the stream. All right. I'll see you guys on Sunday. We'll talk to you then.